With Jon Moxley addressing the CM Punk Instagram story and more. This is Wrestling Hub. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. Recalling his previous gimmick on the main roster of taking selfies, Austin Theory said this with Stadium Astro. It all came from the conversation we had when I was doing the dark matches before I got to the main roster. I had like a 15 meeting with him, and it was just about, who are you? I think he was starting to notice and hear from producers and agents and other people that were there that had been around me. They had been talking highly of me, and he wanted to know who this person was. Sitting in that 15 minutes, I just let him know my passion and my work ethic and who I am as a person. I think that's what led to it. I think he wanted to test me on that because I remember the first thing I ever did on TV, he walked up to me, I was about to go out. This was when I was starting the selfie thing. He said, "Go out there and be confident like I know you are." That's always stuck with me because I am confident and I stick with that, and that's what has always gotten me here, and I can back it up. Just having the opportunity with him, it was amazing, and I'm glad that I was able to share who I am, and it was enough for him to give me a chance. With WWE looking to legalize gambling on their matches, AEW President Tony Khan was asked about this as he told the Bet Las Vegas and the Sporting Tribune, "We're already doing it." It's a little interesting to see all this talk about it because DraftKings has a great partnership with AEW and they're offering propositions on all events. It's a huge sponsorship for us with DraftKings and it's been happening. If people would like to get action on the big events, specifically Double or Nothing, there are frequently great props and match betting on the Double or Nothing main event and some details around the show. When Double or Nothing comes to Las Vegas, you will be able to wager on it on DraftKings. They are a great sponsor for AEW, and it's been a great partnership. I've read some things about potentially more of that kind of action, but from what I've seen, there's already a lot of that going on through our partnership with DraftKings. Dave Meltzer would add on Wrestling Observer Radio, they're not very receptive to it, not WWE, but the gaming commissions. One of the commissions pretty much said no. MGM Grand, the books there don't want to take any action on professional wrestling. They just thought that the idea was, on the surface, completely ludicrous. Most states do not allow betting on the Academy Awards. There are states that do. I think there's 7, and WWE's thing was, if you can bet on the Academy Awards, why can't you bet on us? And we'll do the same safeguards the Academy Awards do. If it were to happen, we've talked about this before, it's just an incredible headache to the creative team, the wrestlers, everyone. I don't expect anything soon, but they're trying in several states, and we'll see what happens. On Cafe de Renee, Jazz talked about pitching a storyline to Stephanie McMahon as she said, Stephanie watched, read it and everything. A couple of weeks later, she got back with me. She's like, "Jazz, I have good news and bad news." She's like, "Which one do you want first?" I was like, "Just throw it at me however you want to give it to me." She said, "The good news is we loved it. Bad news is we're going to give it to somebody else." I was like, wow. Talking about his future in pro wrestling, Adam Cole told the Pop Break, "As far as March 29th goes, I could not be more elated and excited to get back in the ring. It's my dream. This is all I ever wanted to do since I was 9, and I am very proud of the career that I've had. But in a lot of ways, I haven't even hit my prime yet in my opinion. I feel as if I have 10 to 15 more years in the ring. I am very thankful that I have been given the second chance in a lot of different ways. March 29th, I am going to be a wreck." When it comes to former New Japan star Jay White signing with either WWE or AEW, Dave Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio, "I don't know where he'll go. It's between WWE and AEW, last thing I heard." But that was 2 weeks ago. It was 50-50. It's hard to say when that's the thing. It just depends on who's got the best plans, who offers the best money. Could be WWE, but if Tony Khan wants him, it could be AEW. Speaking about the prospect of former NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis joining WWE, Dave Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio, "I know that there were issues. I mean, Bruce Prichard at one point, I don't know what the situation is today, but at one point Bruce Prichard was not a fan of Nick Aldis. So it was always one of those things where with Bruce Prichard in power, it wasn't happening." As he was previously seen in an ambulance on AEW Dynamite, it seems Matt Jackson is out of action with an injury, with Brian Alvarez saying on Wrestling Observer Radio, "I just heard that it was a partially torn biceps, and it happened in the Awesome Winnipeg match in Canada. It happened earlier in the match, but he worked through it. They don't know if he'll need surgery, is what I heard." On the sessions, Jon Moxley said this about the drama he's experienced in AEW. "I will say this, I hate to say it, I don't think I've ever said anything even remotely negative about AEW, but I will say this, as an observer, it seems like I spent 8 years on the indies, a couple of years in WWE developmental, spent like 8 years in WWE. I have never seen so much BS drama in one place in my entire life. I hate to say that. I don't know if it's because the age of social media and it gets blown out of proportion, like one person posts one stupid drunk tweet and all of a sudden it's all anybody wants to talk about. We're sitting up here doing a podcast. You know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about the stellar match Vikingo and Kenny Omega just had, or all the cool stuff going on in AEW, cool shows happening. We're not talking about this great pay-per-view we just had. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about some BS. Let me be clear. The vast majority of people there don't cause any trouble or any BS, but they're getting sucked down into this like everybody else, into the muck. There's plenty of people who just want to get better and perform and just do this job, man. It's the best job in the world." In that same interview, Jon Moxley talked about his past few months in AEW with his faction and even mentioned his feud with CM Punk. Pretty quickly, I was like, man, actually, being sober is awesome. This is fantastic. I'm having so much fun. I was working with my friends, Blackpool Combat Club, me and Bryan Danielson, and William Regal. This is great. They're talking to me about signing a new thing, and I was like, if everything just stays exactly as it is right now, I'll be here forever. You can pay me in cash in an envelope at the end of the night. I don't give a damn. But I can't tell you what I'm going to feel like in 6 months, especially not in 3 years or 5 years. And once I make a commitment, then I will push through injuries, and I will push myself too hard, and I will do all these things that add up and leads you down the road or whatever. So I was not in a hurry to make any kind of grand commitments at first. That being said, during this time period, the night that what's-his-dick, CM Punk, is talking about in Minneapolis, the night he came back and was hopping out on one foot, bumping around Inner Circle or whatever after me and Jericho wrestled, a badass match by the way. So we're talking later about stuff. Now keep in mind, this is my whole point. I basically don't work there. For all intents and purposes, I don't even work here. Tony Khan is not my boss. I don't even have to be in this room. I don't have to do So even me being in this room and offering and agreeing to a storyline that puts you over at the pay-per-view, if anything, I'm bending over backwards for Tony and for this dude Punk and for the company and everybody. I didn't have to. I didn't have to do If anything, I was bending over backwards. So that's it. Touching on his current contract with AEW, Jon Moxley told the sessions, "If you're curious, because I got out of rehab and my contract was coming up, they extended it for the times that I missed. Cool. I'm glad they did actually, because I didn't want to feel like I owed them anything. They extended it a little bit. It was coming up. They were talking to me about it. And the last thing I wanted to do when I got out of rehab, because all they were telling me was basically, logic will tell you don't go back to wrestling because you're just gonna fall into the same old habits. So I wanted to just like ease back into it and see what life was like on the other side. And the last thing I wanted to do was just hurry up and sign a long-term commitment, because what if started to go off the rails? For that previously mentioned interview, Moxley responded to CM Punk's now deleted Instagram story where he said it's annoying just because somebody said some stupid on social media. Like, that's not news, but it is. It ends up being a thing. I don't want to get dragged into this dumb I could unload on a lot of people right now. And when I start getting dragged into this it tempts me to do that, but I'm not going to sink to that level. But I will say this, just going to give you like a tidbit of information from my point of view. The entire summer, I was not under contract. No contract, free agent. I was at SummerSlam weekend wrestling desperado and the day of SummerSlam. Suplexed him on a bunch of aluminum cans and cut in half. It was dope. I could have walked into SummerSlam that night with the AEW belt if I had been so inclined. Nobody knew that because I don't put my out there in the world and let everybody know everything about my business, you know? I was not under contract. Speaking of the deleted Instagram story Dave Meltzer revealed on Wrestling Observer Radio, they don't want people saying things about this. There are also some people who are pretty hot about this too. Talking about WWE's position ahead of media rights negotiations, CEO Nick Khan told Sports Business Journal, "If you look at the ratings and relevancy of our product, we like to think we're in a good position. We look to get into the heat of the conversation first with our incumbents by the middle of the year or so. Depending on the timing and how strategic alternatives shake out, it will either be middle of the year, getting hot and heavy, or sometime shortly thereafter. When it comes to a sale," Khan added, "that's probably the trickiest of all the parts. But one thing that all potential buyers know is that the rights that Fox and NBCU negotiated for separately will obviously have to be adhered to and respected, with all sorts of good faith attached to that." And this was your Pro Wrestling News Update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.